Hello everyone, Lord Daimyo here, and this is my review for Candy Flurry, Ame no Furu, manga chapter number 9. So, we've got a pretty cool cover page of Tsurugi as a baseball player, sort of pointing her bat up, and the chapter is called Counterattack with a Home Run, so a lot of baseball themes going on right now, and that will only extend into the meat of the chapter, so let's get into it. So, continuing from the last chapter, Umino is down on the ground, and Tsurugi is over him talking to the popcorn user. And she's saying, "No, you're the real loser," like she said last chapter. And the popcorn user's like, "Oh, you mean like that guy? A loser like that guy where, like, I can easily get defeated?" And he's like, "How am I a loser?" And Tsurugi says, "Your personality, not to mention your face and your fashion, is loser quality." So, immediately, just as I've been saying this whole series, they're kids. It's so funny. She's saying, your face is a loser, your clothes are a loser. And the popcorn user's like, "We weren't even talking about clothes or face or anything right now. What's going on?" And he's like, "What are you talking about?" And she's like, "Just look at your clothes. Like, that skull, he's got like a black tank top with a skull on it, and the skull has like the same hair style as he does." And she points that out. She's like, "Did you make that yourself?" And he gets super self-conscious, and he's like covering his shirt with his arms. And he's like, "Okay, well, these aren't actually the clothes I chose to wear. Everything else was in the wash. Like, everything was dirty." And she's like, "And what about your necklace? It's just a chain. It's so dumb." He's like, "I don't have to explain myself to you." So it's just like dumb little kid bickering, fighting that you'd see on the playground in like grade school. It's so funny. And I love it about this manga, about how everyone's like this. Even the villains. Even the villains. So then they really start fighting. He flicks a kernel at her, it explodes, and then all of a sudden, like, they all get sent back to him and they explode over his head. And just as I had feared, we have a double page spread of Tsurugi with her lollipop. And he, of course, "What, a lollipop?" That's, shocked. So, so I and a lot of other people, I'm sure, were hoping Tsurugi would not just resort to her lollipop like she always does. And we're hoping that she would use some of her confeito and her reset like utensil weapons, just so we can kind of get used to her. But in hindsight, I think those fears were a little too early, because we get to see more of her lollipop, which is useful. We'll see more about that later. And also, it sort of saves the time for her to learn about all this reset stuff when she's on like reset missions with Misaki and Irie and Umino. So I'm okay with it, because at first I'm like, "Oh no, not her lollipop." But then by the end of the chapter, I'm like, "Okay, this makes more sense." We find out more about the lollipop, and there's time for the reset stuff later. There's time. Don't worry about it. There's time. And of course, she explains what we all knew, and maybe we're all questioning. The cameras are down, no one's watching. She can use her lollipop. That's fine. I just hope that the lollipop doesn't shatter into pieces, and that's how they've always found out about her before. Is there's just shards of lollipop. So hopefully this doesn't happen. And especially with an exploding popcorn guy, this is tough. So the popcorn user's laughing, and he's like, "You're a lollipop user? That's some bad luck, getting blamed for destroying Tokyo." And she's like, "How do you know that?" And he's like, Why should I tell you? You called me a loser." So that's pretty... He said blamed for destroying Tokyo, not for destroying Tokyo. So does he know that Tsurugi wasn't the one that destroyed Tokyo? Like, does he know the actual Lollipop user that destroyed Tokyo? Or does he know that maybe Tokyo was destroyed some other way and then Lollipops were placed there to show, like, to pin it on someone? But then that kind of doesn't make sense because you think the people who are seeing their houses being destroyed and escaped would say, oh no, it was something else, and then why are all these lollipops here? Not, I mean, obviously they're like, oh, it was lollipops falling, so who knows. Anyways, and then the popcorn user says, you're a bigger loser for having a lollipop as a weapon. So this sort of goes from, instead of Tsurugi just saying you're a loser and him saying no, I'm not, now it's going to which one's better. And Tsurugi says, how can you diss anyone wearing a shirt like that? So it's so funny. And it goes from popcorn's better, lollipop's better. And they make some pretty good points. It's really funny. Tsurugi says popcorn doesn't even taste like anything. It's caramel or salt and other stuff that flavors it. And he says popcorn's great because you can choose the flavor. Lollipops, are just the one flavor, candy or whatever. And she says he says lollipops only look pretty. She says presentation is also important. It's so funny. I just love how in between their fights, they are just bickering about who's better and who's a loser and who's not, just acting like little kids. So then, here's the real fighting. The real fighting starts. And the popcorn user starts winding up his kernels like he's a baseball pitcher. And Tsurugi grabs her lollipop and starts reeling back like it's a baseball bat. So now we've got more into what we saw, the name of the chapter and the cover page. This is baseball themed, which also leads more into their kids. I mean, why have like a all-out big shonen anime fight when you're kids and you would just play sports? You'd solve your differences by sports or playing something like that. So I think this makes sense that instead of actually fighting and like doing violence on each other, they are just like playing a game while fighting. It's so funny, and also insulting each other the whole time. So popcorn user, which we never find out his name, so we just another villain. Popcorn user, macaron user, donut user. I mean, it'd be cool if we found out their names. Anyways, popcorn user throws a kernel, and she bats it out, home run, it explodes over his head. So then he keeps throwing more, she keeps batting more, back and forth, but then he changes up his pitch, and it misses her lollipop and explodes behind her. And so he's like, yes, awesome, game over, got her. And just saying game over is another childish thing. Anyways, so what Tsurugi had done is she used her lollipop as a shield and shielded her attack. But just like I feared, her lollipop's pretty brittle. It looks like it's going to fall to pieces soon. So if this happens again, we're going to have pieces scattered everywhere and she's going to get in trouble. So, look, I'm saying it like a kid. She's going to get in trouble. She's going to get found out and arrested. That's the real adult thing, not just get in trouble like a kid. So, they're still saying, popcorn's better, all this, all that. And Tsurugi's like, this isn't over. And she switches up her stance. And he's like, this isn't going to work if you just keep hitting him back like this. So she switches up her stance and has the lollipop behind her and the stick pointing up and out towards the popcorn user. So it's a really weird stance why she'd have it like this. You really can't hit like this. So what's she planning? And so the popcorn user's like, what she's not going to hit, is she going to like bunt it? Which bunting in baseball terms, if you don't know, is when you just basically have the bat stationary and just move it in the way of the ball so it just sort of bounces back barely, just enough to, start going. And that wouldn't work for this battle because she needs to send these kernels back to him. So what she does is, and we never knew this, and this is why I'm fine with her using lollipops now, is her stick, the end of the lollipop stick, extended out like the power pole, like on Dragon Ball. It just extends out and just hits the popcorn user in the stomach, sending him flying back. And he says the stick extends, that's not fair. He said that's not even part of the candy. Like, that's not even the candy part. I thought this was a battle to see which treat was better. This wasn't a fight. This wasn't a fight to save people or attack people or anything. It was a fight to see which candy was better. That's how these kids are. I love it. And Tsumugi says, the stick is also part of the lollipop. And the popcorn user says, that's debatable. So even at the end of the whole fight, it was still just a childish argument of whose treat was better. And I absolutely love that about not just this chapter, but this whole series, this whole manga. It's like I've always said, and I'm going to do a bigger video about this. So if you are into Candy Flurry and you've been checking out all these chapter reviews or just this one, make sure you stay tuned to my YouTube channel, and I'm going to be putting out some more Candy Flurry content, not just chapter reviews. I've already done one, but I'm going to do a lot more because, and I'm really going to go into deep about this, is the whole thing is just a bunch of kids acting like adults, but they're just still kids underneath it all. And I absolutely love it. And I think this chapter was probably one of the biggest examples because it was very forefront in the center of their fight. And the whole fight was this chapter. So, another fantastic chapter. Absolutely loved it. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below for Candy Flurry chapter number 9. Did you like it or not? I think the only thing that would be pretty controversial would be Tsumugi using her lollipop. Because I know a lot of people were wanting her to use reset weapons and confetto and stuff. So let me know what you think about that and anything else. Also, you can follow me on Twitter if you want. I tweet about Candy Flurry and other things. My link is in the description down below. I follow everyone back. But thank you very much for watching. Have a fantastic day.